I will welcome you again to the second portion of tonight's program, which deals with the candidates for the 8th Legislative District for the state of Washington. And running in position 1, we have Jay Clough and Brad Klippert. And in position 2, we have Larry Haler and Richard Ruther. And the format will be the same. They have 2 minutes for opening, 2 minutes for questions, and 1.5 minutes for closing. And with that, we will begin with the opening statement from Jay Clough.
Thank you very much for having us here today. I'd like to thank the League of Women Voters and the crew filming this, the Richland City and Charter Communications. And thank you all for being here. I know there's another debate going on right now that you could be watching, and I appreciate you being here. My name is Jay Clough. I was born and raised right here in the Tri-Cities. I went to Kennewick High School, and after high school, I went to the Marine Corps as an infantryman. I came back from the Marine Corps and used the GI Bill to go to Central Washington University, where I earned 2 bachelor's degrees and had the opportunity to study abroad in Beijing, China, and Seoul, South Korea, where I studied language and culture. This is important for our community because we just read in the paper today or yesterday that our #1 trading partner is China, our export partner, and our, I believe, #3 is Japan. That's very important. My main focus is on infrastructure projects here locally, making sure that Red Mountain Interchange happens, making sure that we have infrastructure development in South Kennewick, making sure that 1,600 acres out at Hanford gets used for high-tech industry development, make sure it gets used for an energy park, and make sure that it gets used for manufacturing. As well, I'd like to work with the federal government to make sure that the Pasco Airport, or what we call the Tri-City Airport, gets expanded so we can have larger runways so that our manufacturers can get their goods in and out of our community easily, and it'll make it easier for us to attract manufacturing to our community. I'd like to make sure that we support our wine industry. This growing industry in our community needs the support to not catch up, but to close the gap a little bit with California. I think we have a great opportunity to do that, to support our wineries both locally, state, or nationally, and internationally. And then finally, make sure that education is fully funded, making sure that we stop the attacks on our teachers and the underfunding of our education system. So thank you very much.
Thank you, and we'll move on to his opponent, Brad Klippert.
Hello, I am Representative Klippert running for re-election. I believe in we the people and one nation under God. I am 100% pro-life and 100% pro-marriage between one man and one woman. I believe in being tough on crime, a strong military defense, secure borders, and legal immigration, and U.S. and Washington state sovereignty. I believe in excellence in education and excellent, affordable health care and health care insurance, free market health care and health care insurance, not socialized medicine. I support free enterprise, hydroelectric power as a recognized renewable energy source, and I am pro-nuclear energy. I want to build and support a strong, positive, predictable business climate in Washington state in order to promote private sector job growth and prosperity for Washington's working citizens. I stand for fiscal responsibility of our government, accountability, and reducing the bureaucracy and regulations that are stifling our economy. My goals and priorities are: 1, safer communities; 2, continually improving the quality of educational opportunities we offer in Washington state; 3, a business-friendly environment in Washington state where our business can grow and prosper and hire more employees and thus reduce our unemployment rate; and 4, keeping our energy rates as low as possible. I certified as a teacher in Washington state in 1997, and I hold a master's degree in teaching. When I'm not working in the legislature, I work full-time as a deputy in the Benton County Sheriff's Office with over 19 years of law enforcement experience. I'm a lieutenant colonel in the Army National Guard with over 25 years of military leadership experience. My committee assignments in Olympia are currently, I'm the ranking member on the Public Safety and Emergency Preparedness Committee. I serve on the Education Committee, the Transportation Committee, Judiciary Committee, and the Joint Committee for Military Operations and Veterans Affairs. It's been an honor serving you this last 4 years, and I look forward to serving you again.
Thank you, and we'll move on to position 2 and begin with Larry Haler.
Thank you very much. And State Representative Larry Haler, and I would definitely like to thank the League of Women Voters, the Tri-City Herald, and the various chambers who have put on this event this evening. It has been my honor and my distinct privilege to serve as your state representative, serving the citizens of this district for the last 8 years. I thank you for placing your trust in me for the last 8 years. I hope I have demonstrated leadership as well as vision. The election for this state representative position, this particular position, deals with leadership and with vision. As we all know, vision is the ability to see challenges that lay ahead, and leadership is the ability to anticipate them and plan for them. I have had that experience as mayor of the city of Richland. I've now had that experience for the last 8 years as your state representative. I have served in a leadership position ever since I've been in the legislature. I was ranking member of Early Learning and Children's Services for 4 years, and for the last 4 years I have been ranking member of Higher Education. I've served on the Ways and Means Committee for the last 8 years, as well as the Technology, Energy, and Communications Committee, starting off as assistant ranking, and now because of my position with Higher Education, I am being a ranking member. I am just currently a member of the Tech Committee or Energy Committee. My examples of leadership is I've teamed with others to make sure that WSU Tri-Cities happened. I also teamed with others to restructure the HEC Board. I served on the Governor's Task Force and a bipartisan committee to restructure the HEC Board, make it functional so that it's responsive to our 21st century needs as far as higher education goes. And I've teamed with Cadillac as well as Columbia Basin College in securing capital funding to build the Health Sciences and Nursing Center, which has helped to fill the gap that we had in this community and this region in nurses. Thank you.
Thank you. And we'll hear from the second candidate, and that's Richard Ruther.
My name is Richard Ruther. I'm a fifth-generation Washingtonian. My great-great-grandmother came over on the Oregon Trail in the 1850s, and we've been in the state ever since then. I actually have now seventh-generation grandchildren. I'm a teacher. As a former teacher, education is key to my thought about government, my thought about what the legislature needs to do. We're under order from the state Supreme Court to fully fund education. That's the McCleary decision. The legislature started working on this during the last session, but didn't really get much ground done on this. I don't think that partisan politics should be the driving force in getting that problem solved. Our kids can't wait. Our kids can't wait for the schools to be funded while the adults bicker over their political differences. I think we need to go to Olympia and solve that problem. I know that a lot of people talk about reaching across the aisle. Well, we always say that we reach across the aisle, but we don't always do that. That's just the way people are. And I think that we need to work harder, not at reaching across the aisle, but at reaching out to each other as citizens of the state of Washington. I'm a natural leader. People come to me and they say, would you like to do this? Would you like to do this? I've been elected as into church or organizational presidencies. I have natural leadership abilities, and I hope that you can recognize these as we go into this election. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll now start the question and answer portion of tonight's forum, and we will begin with Mr. Klippert. Besides protecting public safety, do you see the role of our state's criminal justice system to correct and rehabilitate or to punish the offenders?
I think our role more is correction and rehabilitation. Anything we can do to correct behavior or even prevent it. One of the things we talk about in the Public Safety Committee is prevention, intervention, and suppression. And it's a three-legged stool: prevention, intervention, and suppression. So anything we can do to prevent crime is a good thing. If it's happening, anything we can do to intervene and stop it is even is better. And if we have to, then we have to suppress it. And so it's a three-legged stool that we need to work on. And more than punishment, we want to correct, and we want to get those citizens to be productive citizens so they no longer have to be incarcerated in our jails or our prisons.
Okay, Mr. Clough?
I would agree that we need to correct and rehabilitate. I think it's important also that we keep in mind that many of our folks that are incarcerated are there because of mental health issues or chemical dependency issues. And this issue got brought up in the commissioners' forum. But I think it's very important for our community to make sure that there are resources there to identify those folks before they commit crimes in the first place, making sure that our police officers are well-trained to identify and help those folks rather than throwing them into a system that doesn't help them. So I do think that we do need to correct and rehabilitate, and that does include mental health help and chemical dependency help.
Okay, thank you. We have another question, and we'll begin with Mr. Haler. Do you have a solution to reduce welfare fraud, especially the abuse of food benefits?
It's a very complex problem. We have a great deal of welfare fraud, and I think we can start solving that problem through driver's licenses. This is one of 3 states that allows anybody to come in and get a driver's license as long as you have a post office box. And we've had people come before us living in New Jersey and other states who say, well, we've talked about tightening up welfare, and they say, well, you can't do that because if you put a new license in there, you tighten it up on us, we can't get your welfare living in New Jersey or New York or North Carolina. And the majority party just kind of winks at that and moves on. So we do need to have a change of majority in our House and our Senate and the governor's office. But we do need to tighten up, first of all, who can get licenses. You have to prove that you're a resident of this state in order to get welfare and resident of the United States of America. I think that is a beginning. We do have an awful lot of welfare fraud, and we have 22,000 people who work in DSHS, and that's probably way too many people working, and a lot of that has to deal with welfare as well as child services.
Okay, thank you. And Mr. Ruther?
I'm not sure if Mr. Haler just said that we need fewer people working in welfare and DSHS. I don't think that's what you said, but that's kind of what it sounded like. One of the things that's happening now, one of the laws that came up before the legislature was to allow people on welfare to use their little credit card swipe things in casinos. This shouldn't happen. That's fairly obvious. I think that we need to front end the solution to the problem and find out why people are having to go on welfare in the first place. And that probably has to do with employment. We need to provide the employment for people so that they don't have to go on welfare, which means that we need to work with our employers on expanding their own the businesses that we have, and bringing in other businesses as needed. So to me, this is a front-end problem, not a back-end problem. If we can not have so many people on welfare, we won't have the welfare fraud problem that we do.
Thank you. We'll go back and we'll begin with Mr. Clough. This is a question from the Tri-City Regional Chamber of Commerce. What are 3 things the state government should not be doing that it is doing now?
I never thought of that. Let's see. Well, they shouldn't be over-regulating our small businesses. They shouldn't be overtaxing our small businesses. I guess I'd have to reverse it. What they should be doing is making sure that there's an incubator system for our small businesses to grow into larger businesses. I think the biggest problem, at least what I've noticed as a family, my family is a small business family, is the incredible hurdles that they've had to overcome to be successful, and making sure that we're supporting our small businesses so they can grow into larger businesses. Something like 60% of our total employment is from small businesses, and making sure that those small businesses are supported and that they can grow. So I guess that would be my answer.
Thank you. And Mr. Klippert?
How many? What's the
You
question?
only get 3.
So 3? Well, absolutely, Mr. Clough hit the nail on the head. We need to reduce our regulations that are stifling our business growth and prosperity. Unfunded mandates that come down from the legislature are unacceptable. And in this last 2-year biennium that we've had in Washington State, we had 6, I say again, over 6 special sessions. In other words, ladies and gentlemen, your state is supposed to get its work done in the first session in 105 days and the second session in 60 days. The leadership in the last 2 years required 6 special sessions to get the work done. That is unacceptable. The legislature should be able to get their work done on time, and so special sessions are something that need not happen again in the future.
Thank you, and we'll begin with Mr. Ruther over here. Another question from the chamber. We are starting to see the unintended consequences of Initiative 937 on energy rates. Are you willing to support legislation to amend this initiative and change the buy before need policy?
Excuse me, what was that? The buy, what?
The buy before need policy, I think that refers to, purchasing a certain percentage of green energy. And in our area, we have more hydroelectric than some areas.
Well, the Richland City Council just last night approved a rate increase. I haven't been following that particular one, but it seems to me that we need to have the flexibility to increase our rates if we need to. In order to get the green energy on the grid and paying for itself, the theory there is that over a period of time, by supporting it, subsidizing it now, it will pay for itself in the long run. Hopefully that will work out. If we stop doing that in the meantime, then we'll never really know if that policy was an effective one or not. Stopping doing that, that's a turn and a shift in the policy that might not be the best way to go. So I would say that I'd like to see it work its way out a little longer into time, and see if that works. But yes, I do believe that renewables need to be in the mix, and yes, I do believe that water power should be called renewable.
Okay, and Mr. Haler.
Thank you very much for that question. In fact, I've been working on trying to reform Initiative 937 for the last 6 years. This bill, or this initiative, which was only passed by barely 51% of the people in this state, is guaranteed to raise your electrical rates by 2020 to 32%. You will not be able to afford renewable energy. What we've been trying to do, and what Representative Clippert and I have been doing, is we've been running a joint bill for the last 4 years to recognize hydro as being renewable. 72% of our electrical is generated by hydro. And under I-937, hydro is not recognized. We're the only state in the nation and the only state in this earth, this world, that does not recognize hydro as renewable because of 937. And so we're still running that bill. Hopefully we will be getting to the majority here in the near future where we can overturn it, Initiative 937, or at least amend it. As far as green energy goes, it's got 4 or 5 subsidies starting at the federal level, coming on down to the local level. If you have to have that many subsidies, you're not a viable electrical resource. It needs more time. I agree with Mr. Ruther, but it's very expensive, and that's what's driving the costs. That's what's driving the costs on the electrical rates right now, and that is why you will have a 32% increase in your electrical rates by 2020, if not more. Thank you very much.
Thank you. We have another question from the audience that deals with energy also from a little different perspective, and I'm having a little trouble reading the writing. But how do you see the energy future transitioning, and what can you do about it in assisting this transition, or is that part of your responsibility in an elected position? And let's see, on yours, we're beginning with Mr. Clippert.
Absolutely, it's a part of my responsibility. And Representative Haler, did an excellent job in answering this question previously. Ladies and gentlemen, it's an absolute tragedy what's happening in Washington State. For the hypocrisy and the lie that's taking place in the state to say that hydroelectric power is not a recognized renewable energy source must come to an end, ladies and gentlemen. It's one of our greatest resources. It's our cheapest energy source, and it must be recognized as a renewable energy source. Ladies and gentlemen, when I started in the legislature 4 years ago, when I drove over the pass and got a tank of gas before I was sworn in, a gallon of gas was $1.65. When our president took office 4 years ago, a gallon of gas was $1.85. Now I'm having to pay near $4 an hour because of all of the regulations that are taking place across this nation that are now not allowing us to tap into our own energy resources. That must come to an end. The high prices that you're paying for energy in Washington State are totally and completely unnecessary, and we can do a better job. And I plan on doing something about it. It's a passion of mine.
Thank you, and we'll go to Mr. Clough, and what do you see as your role in possibly transitioning to a new energy future?
Well, first off, I think the way that's been portrayed just now, it's a bit of a straw man argument. There's nobody on this panel that doesn't believe hydro should be renewable. It should be, and everyone on this panel has said that. We need to follow the lead of the local farmers here who have said that conservation is important. Both in the ag industry, but in the local community. We need to make sure that projects such as gravity storage are looked at and investigated. And if you don't know what that is, you basically pump water up a hill into a reservoir. It stays there until the energy is needed. So automatically, solar and wind become on demand. Now, I do think that solar and wind have gotten a little bit ahead of themselves because we didn't have anything in place to make them on demand. On demand would be nuclear, coal, and hydro. So we need to look into ways to make solar and wind an on-demand energy source. But until that happens, we need to continue to focus on making sure we're doing what we're talking about here, which is making hydro as a renewable energy source. And making sure that we're looking at conservation. Now, the gas prices, I'm not even sure why this is part of the conversation, but he completely got the facts wrong. The reason why gas prices are high is because there's 2 refineries that are down. Oil companies are getting out of the refining business because there's razor-thin margins on those. My opponent in the last election cycle talked about he wanted to bring a refinery here, which costs billions of dollars, makes no profit, and is incredibly volatile, as you've seen with a couple of them exploding on the West Coast this last year. And so, taxes do play a part in that, but the majority of the problem with our oil prices right now is a supply and demand issue, and it's a refinery issue. We just don't have enough refineries because they don't make enough money. So, thank you.
Thank you. We will move on to higher ed, and we will begin with Mr. Haler. Over the last 2 decades, and this is according to an article in the Seattle Times, we have dropped to 46 in the nation for high school grads going on to college full-time, either a community or a 4-year college. We also import more college graduates per capita than any other state. That means we are not doing a good job of educating our students for the jobs that are available in our state. What could the legislature do to help reverse this statistic?
What we've done, it was a bipartisan effort. I worked with Larry Sequest, who's the chair of higher education. I'm the ranking member. We got together and passed a bill called 1795, which dealt with 1,100 new measures and initiatives to change higher education and how it's addressed in this state. First of all, we gave tuition setting authority to the universities, our 4 major universities, on a provisional condition that they didn't exceed their or go overboard on raising tuitions. They have done that. We're now having a come down and sit down meeting. We had this last week with them, and I'm meeting with the Board of Regents of a major university on the west side next week to discuss about perhaps rescinding the tuition setting authority. And one of the reasons the tuitions are raising in this state is that we have exorbitant administrative salaries. $500,000 for a public relation person, $200,000 for I don't want, it's just exorbitant. And $2 million for a president of a university, they're nothing more than a city manager. So basically $500,000 is probably adequate for a university president. We're chasing our tails on those, trying to get the funding. But the 1,100 initiatives that we took are slowly going into place. We're also trying to cut back on the amount of remediation that is needed at our community, with the community colleges as well as the four-year universities. We're also streamlining some of the services. We're trying to combine services with the various universities so that they don't have high costs. But overall, the only way that we can overcome the deficit that we have right now when it comes to high school kids coming in is to make sure that they get a good education in the K through 12 system, which has not fulfilled the needs that we've had in this state and we need for the future. We're lagging behind in this country, in this world.
Okay, that's a hard problem to solve in 2 minutes, but we'll let Mr. Ruther try also.
Yeah, this again is one of those backfill issues. We're having trouble at higher ed because we're having trouble at K-12. And part of the reason we're having trouble at K-12 is because of federal regulations. No Child Left Behind has done great harm to our education system, especially in math, because in order to get those math scores up, schools are finding that they want to change the curriculum every 2 years, every 3 years. And it's very hard for the kids to track when you change from one curriculum to another. There are cases where kids absolutely get lost. They're A students for a couple of years, you change the curriculum, change the textbook, and they're C students, and they're D students, and they're flunking out. And that's not the way to get them into the colleges. We have to provide the success and the growth at K-12 in order to get them into successful higher ed. I would agree with Larry on the salary issues. Our overhead on administration is too much, and we have that problem in K-12 as well. Too many educators, too much money for administrators, too much pay for administrators. We need to go back and look at those kinds of things. Part of the reason why we're having remediation problems at community college is because the kids are not getting it at K-12, and the reason they're not getting it at K-12 is because the teachers aren't being allowed to teach the way they know how to teach. They're being told what to teach, and that's not how it's done.
Thank you. We'll go back to position one and begin with Mr. Clough. This is another question that deals with education. A few years ago, the legislature passed the college-bound program that would have the state pay for tuition for students who meet certain income levels and grade qualifications, and enroll in the program as a 7th or 8th grader. Today's high school seniors will be the first real test of the state's ability to meet that obligation. Money was put aside for this program. Do you support this program, and do you think the state will be able to meet its obligation?
I do support this program, but I think the state has dropped the ball by pulling so much money out of our post-secondary education system in Washington State. It used to be something like 70% of the cost of higher education was covered by the state and 30% by families. Now it's flipped on its head. Now 70% of the cost is being paid by the student. And I come from a middle-class family. I wouldn't have been able to go to college in today's rates. I went to go look at WSU the other day just to kind of get a feel for what the cost was, and it was over $11,000 a year just for the tuition and the books. That's it. And that doesn't include if somebody needs to get an apartment or any of the living expenses that you have when you're in college. So I think the fault lies with a state legislature that continually allows, for example, cosmetic surgery to avoid taxes in this state at a cost of $13.5 million a year, but then says we don't have enough money to pay for our post-secondary education, which is the seed money for the success of this state. The students that go to those colleges become engineers, they become scientists, they become doctors, they become the people in our community that make us successful. And so the more money we pull out of our secondary education system, our post-secondary education system, the worse off and the harder it's going to be for us as a community. So I do support the program. But I think that needs to be paired with some responsible leadership in Olympia, recognizing that there are places that we should be cutting that are not our post-secondary education. They are at exemptions for taxes on yachts that have been on the books since 1935.
Thank you, and we'll move on to Mr. Clippert.
Thank you very much. Do I agree with the idea? I agree with the idea. The problem is, before I came into office, this state had a budget surplus. Every year that I've been in office now, we have had a budget deficit in terms of billions of dollars. This year, we're facing a minimum of a $1 billion budget deficit. Ladies and gentlemen, that's a $1,000 million deficit. What we need to ask ourselves is, when we have deficits like this, what are the core responsibilities of our government? What are the core responsibilities of our government? And so then when we do that, we have to establish our priorities. And when we establish our priorities, government needs to live within its means just like we need to in our households. And when we run out of money, then that's when we need to stop spending. Unfortunately, our federal government has not figured that out yet, but our state government must always hold to that. Representative Hayter has proposed a balanced budget amendment to our Constitution. I support that idea. Our state must always stay within the money that we have to spend. If we have the money to support this program, I'm all for it. But if we don't have the money and we have a budget deficit, we must stay within the core responsibilities, the priorities of our government.
Thank you. And we will move from the young people to the older people. As the baby boomer generation ages, the cost of caring for them will put a strain on national and state budgets. Many older people end up on Medicaid to pay for the high cost of facilities providing assistance or full nursing home care. Is there a way the state could better manage the costs of caring for these individuals and still maintain quality care? And we're beginning with Mr. Ruther on this one.
I think I'm the oldest person up here. I just turned 65. Thank you. I think that we can just generally do healthcare better from birth to death. I think we have too many people who cannot afford the care that they need for one reason or another. Either they are not employed, and the United States has this odd system of you basically have to have a job to have insurance, or you're not earning enough, you're not being able to set aside the money for your old age, you don't have the $75 to $100 a month to put aside for your old age. So I think that we need, as a society, to make some provision for that. Yeah, okay, I'm a really out there kind of guy on healthcare. Yes, I think we need Obamacare. I think we need to care for everyone as best we can. We might not be able to cover 100% of everyone's healthcare, but we have to do better than we're doing now. My parents were fortunate enough to have enough income in Social Security and their retirement funds to pay for their last few years. But not everyone is that lucky. And I think we need to figure out how to do that. And I don't have the answer. That's something that I have to talk to other people about. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Mr. Haler, can you solve this in 2 minutes?
I'll give it a try. The last year during our 5th special session in December, we had a lot of downtime, and so the Republican caucus got together, House caucus got together and said, we looked at the majority party's 425 priorities. We said that, you know, they're funding everything in the world. we need to concentrate and get that down to just 3 priorities. After 2 weekends of work and working things out, we came up with 3 priorities. Funding K through 20 education, having that fully funded, helping our most vulnerable, and I'll go back to that one in just a second, and public safety was our third. Now, when we talk about our most vulnerable, we were talking about our senior citizens as well as our developmentally disabled citizens and the mentally ill. We are firm believers that Medicaid should be fully funded for our senior citizens who do use that system and need that system. I think that if we could get down to establishing and maintaining these three priorities, we will end up with a balanced budget in the long term. In the short term, we did have a small deficit area coming up, mainly because of the McClary decision and the fact that we didn't fully fund our rainy day fund. We underfunded it by about $1 billion at a minimum. So if we can stick to these 3 priorities, we can help those seniors who do need that help. And I do believe that the government should not be taking care of all of us. I'm one of those people who believes in free enterprise. I also believe that our churches have been backed out of helping our citizens in this community as well as around this country and this state. And we need to get our churches back into helping with our senior citizen population and taking care of them, as well as some assistance from the government. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I think we have time for a couple more questions. You're not supposed to side during debates. I'm just trying to decide how to phrase these. This is a question from the audience. Referendum 74 is expected to pass. If it does, and we're going to start with Mr. Clipperton, is that the marriage equality referendum? Yeah. Will you both leave this decision alone since it's a vote by the citizens? I guess that there's certain restrictions on what you can or can't do, but what is your position on referendum 74? And what are you expecting, and how will you react?
Okay, and do we expect this will be the last question?
We may have one short one.
First of all, let me start off by saying thank you to everyone who's made this possible tonight, to the League of Women Voters, and for all those who are filming here and everyone who's made this possible. I totally and completely support referendum 74. I believe in supporting marriage between one man and one woman. The majority party in the legislature passed a same-sex marriage bill this last legislative session. Referendum 74, as soon as it was signed by the governor, the next day, referendum 74 was dropped. Now, referendum 74 says that it gives you an opportunity to enact a citizen's veto. In other words, you can vote to reject same-sex marriage. I support that rejection of same-sex marriage. I support referendum 74. I will be voting to reject same-sex marriage because I support the traditional model of one man and one woman. And that will be my stance as long as I serve in the legislature.
Does he have time left? So if it passes, how will that affect your approach?
My support.
I mean, if it fails, if the referendum fails.
My position as a legislator, as long as I'm an elected official, is I will support traditional marriage between one man and one woman.
Okay. These referendums and initiatives on the way they're worded can be a little confusing. So anyway, we'll move on to Mr. Clough.
Yeah, what he's actually saying is he's against referendum 74, not for it, just for clarification. I will respect the voters and what they decide. I think that it's important to be consistent on that. I support the right of the people to make decisions for the state. And if they vote to uphold that, referendum 74, then I will support that. I will not fight against that. I think that if two loving people want to spend the rest of their life together, they should have the same opportunities that my wife and I do. They should be able to have the ability to take care of each other in their elder years and make sure that they're with the person that they choose, not the government chooses. So Thank you.
Thank you. And I think we'll use the same question for the Mr. Haler and Mr. Ruther, and we'll begin with Mr. Haler.
Thank you very much. I'm going to vote to reject or referendum 74. The reason for that is that I as my seatmate, Representative Clippert has said, I support the 4,000-year or 6,000-year tradition of one man and one woman. And so I'm on also on my religious basis. I cannot support the passage of referendum 74. If it does pass, I will not do anything with it. That's a will of the people for the first 2 years, and we'll see what happens after that.
Okay, and Mr. Ruther?
I support our 74. The reason I do is because I believe that everyone should be treated equally. I believe that everyone has rights. I believe that everyone's rights are equal. I know that some people disagree with that. I know that some people will section out the gay and lesbian community for scorn, but I don't feel that that's appropriate. I have gone to one too many funerals for 15-year-old boys who cannot see their life being a positive experience because they are gay. I have been to too many funerals. I will support R74. Thank you.
Thank you. I think we have one quick question, and we'll just give you a minute to answer it. It's the last question from the audience. Should initiatives in our state require a supermajority of 60% or 2/3? And we will begin with Mr. Clough.
Are you specifically talking about 1185 or?
No, just initiatives, I think, in general. I guess it depends on which initiative.
Should initiatives in general require a 2/3 majority to pass?
Or a supermajority of 60%?
No, I don't think so. I think that the majority of the people, we have one person, one vote, and I think a majority of the people that vote should decide what happens in our state. I think that if you increase that to an arbitrary number, no one's going to be satisfied anyway. And in our democracy, we just need to accept the fact that sometimes we win and sometimes we lose, and we'll get them next time. I think if we did a lot more of that, we'd have a lot less of the rancor in Washington, D.C. and Olympia. We'd be able to get more things done. Sometimes I'm going to win, sometimes you're in, and stop demonizing the other side just because you lost.
Thank you. And Mr. Clippert?
Could you repeat the question quickly, please?
Sure. Should initiatives in our state require a supermajority of either 60% or 2/3?
And the answer to that question for me is also no. What we have in Washington State is an opportunity for the citizens to speak. If the citizens have a piece of legislation that they propose, they can propose an initiative, and then that should be able to be won by a simple majority. If the legislature does something that the citizens do not agree with, then they have an opportunity for referendum, and the same is true for that they should have, the majority should win on that too, so the citizens, by simple popular majority vote, can overturn their government's decisions if they don't agree with it. So no, it does not have to be a 60 or supermajority.
Okay, thank you. And we will move on quickly and have you two answer that same question. And Mr. Ruther will go first.
I believe it's a supermajority, whether it's 55, 60, or 66.67, whatever it is. I think that ties the hands of your legislators. I think that majority rules. I think that sometimes, as Mr. Clough said, sometimes we win, sometimes we lose, and we go back and we talk to each other until we figure out how to get that majority. That's how the country was started. It's compromise, folks. It's compromise. We need to go back to compromise. We don't need to beat each other over the head with a supermajority. Thank you.
Thank you, and we'll finish with Mr. Haler.
No, it doesn't require a supermajority. I believe that we should have 50 plus 1 or 51% of the vote in order to pass initiatives and referendum. Our state constitution guarantees the right of the people to petition the government, the state government, through initiative and referendum if they don't like something that the legislature has done or the governor has done, or some rule or a Washington administrative code that may have been passed that an agency's done. So I believe that it should remain at the majority of 50 plus 1 or 51%.
Thank you. We will now move on to our closing statements. We'll begin with the candidates for position 1, and Brad Clippert will give his closing statement first.
Thank you, ma'am. I really don't like talking about myself, so I thought to close tonight I would just share with you some comments that others have shared about me and my service these last 2 years. Dated May 23rd, 2012, Representative Clippert recently received the Guardian of Small Business Award from the National Federation of Independent Business for his voting record in support of protection of small business. Award recipients are graded on votes they take during the 2-year legislative cycle. A lawmaker must have an 80% voting record or higher to receive the award. Clippert had a perfect 100% on the NFIB scorecard. Small business owners across Washington know they can count on Representative Clippert to protect and promote small business, not just when it's convenient, but when it really matters most. Dated May 25th, 2012, Representative Clippert, your 100% voting record in favor of small business during your recent term of office shows you understand the importance of small business to our state's economy and your willingness to fight to protect our free enterprise system. We appreciate your hard work in Olympia and are proud to stand with you just as you stood with us fighting for small business in the legislature. April 2nd, 2012, Representative Clippert, on behalf of the council and staff of the city of Kennewick, I wish to recognize and express our extreme thanks and appreciation for drafting and supporting State Bill 5995. Your efforts regarding this have gone above and beyond the standard support, providing additional land for future industrial development and related jobs it will generate is beneficial to Kennewick, the Tri-City region, and the state of Washington. Again, thank you for all your help and hard work. We look forward to working with you in future projects. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Well, he must have practiced reading that just right. Okay, we'll move on to Jay Clough, and again, he has 90 seconds to help or to convince you that he's the person to vote for.
Again, my name is Jay Clough, and as far as endorsements go, the teachers have endorsed me, as well as Mr. Haler. They have the firefighters have endorsed me, as well as Mr. Haler. Most of the workers out at Hanford have endorsed me, and many of them have Mr. Haler. So you'll notice that my endorsements come from folks that don't really care too much about party. We've heard a lot about party's fault in this and party's fault in that. What it comes down to is finding representatives that the folks that matter think will get things done. I hope to go there and be a voice for everyone in this community, not just one side or the other, and definitely not the extreme minority of one party. I want to go there and be your voice. I want to go there and get transportation issues done. I want to get infrastructure projects done. I want to get this community in a position that it will be successful for the next 50 years. Not the next 2-year cycle so I can get reelected, but for the next 50 years. I want to make sure that you have the representation that you deserve, not that one small segment of our community deserves, but everyone. So I wanted to quickly address a couple things. If I have time, I want to make sure that people understand that special sessions happen because of minorities within their own parties. They don't happen because of the people in the middle. They happen because of the people on the fringes that drag the system down, that do not allow compromise, do not allow conversations. And so if you want someone that's going to be able to work across the aisle and get things done, please vote for Jay Clough November 6th. Thank you.
Thank you, and we'll begin with the first candidate for position 2, and that's Larry Haler.
Thank you very much, and I'd like to thank the League of Women Voters again for this great forum, and the last forum also. The reason that I ran for office was to help create economic development in this community when I was mayor of the city of Richland and a council member. The development you see in Richland occurred when I was mayor for 4 years. It's still here, and it's still growing. And I have held leadership positions as well as in the legislature, as well as in college. I was dorm president. I was captain of my junior varsity rowing team or crew team. And I've been chairman of our church foundation, charitable foundation, did that for 4 years. I've had a lot of community leadership experience as well as national, state, and local leadership experience. I served on the board of directors for the National League of Cities, and just recently the National Conference of State Legislators selected me as one of the emerging national and state leaders in this nation, along with one legislator from each state. And we spent a week back in North Carolina being trained on emerging leaders and training, and it's very complicated. Don't have time in 30 seconds to tell you all that we went through, but it was a great honor. I've also been a leader in the legislature, and I'm also known for my bipartisan outreach, and that's why I was chosen by the Speaker of the House as well as the Minority Leader, Richard DeBolt, to receive this honor, and thank you very much.
Thank you. And Richard Ruther.
I'd like to thank the League of Women Voters for providing this forum for us. I'm an honest person. I'm going to tell you what I think. You may not like what I think, but I'm going to tell you what I think. And when your neighbor comes and asks me the same question, I'm going to give them the same answer. There have been times when politicians will say one thing to one group of people and they'll say something else to another group of people if that serves their purposes. Mr. Haler here has indicated that he's for 50% plus one majority, and yet he sponsored HR 4208, which requires a 60% majority vote. So he's saying one thing and doing something else. I want to be known, if I can paraphrase Kurt Cobain, I'd rather be disliked for who I am than liked for who I am not. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I'll remind you, though I think you probably all know who our candidates are. We have in position 1, Jay Clough and Brad Clippert. And in position 2, Larry Haler and Richard Ruther. And again, like our other candidates, I want to thank them for participating. I want to thank Mike Charbonneau for his help in arranging and recording this tonight. The deadline for registering, if there's anybody out there that's watching in this time frame or you know anyone, is Monday, this coming Monday, October 8th. You may do this in person or online at the Secretary of State's site. Ballots will be mailed out on October 17th. Drop boxes will be available from the 18th to Election Day on November 6th. Mailed ballots must be postmarked by November 6th. People who have not voted before in this state can register in person up to October 29th. So if somebody has moved in and they're still fairly new and just catching on, they can still go to the auditor's office and register in person. We have registration forms in the back if you know anyone that needs one, or we can help you with it. There's also some other League material. There's a sign-up sheet if you'd be interested in learning more about League. And some of our members that are here would be happy to talk to you. I want to thank you for coming and being here tonight, and I hope you'll encourage your friends and neighbors to try and watch this on TV. It's a very inexpensive way for the candidates to help get their message out and for the voters to learn about the candidates firsthand. And we'll thank them for participating and let everybody go home. And you can stack your chairs if you want to. Oh, well, thank you. It wasn't the cool weather has helped. It wasn't quite so hot up here.